The Israeli army says it has retrieved the bodies of 6 hostages from Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. The 6 men had been captured in southern Israel during the Hamas attacks on October the 7th, and all but one of them were already presumed to have been dead. Up to 70 hostages are still thought to be alive in Gaza. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting Egypt and Qatar as he continues his push for a ceasefire and hostage release deal in Gaza. After talks with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday, Mr. Blinken said Israel had accepted what he called a bridging proposal and urged Hamas to do the same. But even as America's top diplomat tried to talk up prospects of an end to the war in Gaza, the violence there has continued unabated. The Hamas-run Civil Defense Authority says an Israeli airstrike on a school housing displaced families near Gaza City has killed at least 10 Palestinians, with dozens more deaths reported in the past 24 hours. Israel's military says it struck a Hamas base embedded inside that school.
In recent weeks, given the heightened tensions, we have deployed additional assets to the region. The purpose of the deployment of these assets is not to provoke aggression, but rather to deter it, to make sure that it doesn't happen. But also to make clear that if it does, we are fully prepared to defend Israel. We've coupled this effort with an intense diplomatic campaign, virtually a global diplomatic campaign, working with countries around the world to send the message strongly to every concerned party not to take any steps that would escalate tensions, that would risk provoking a wider conflict. Just last week, the President put forward a proposal with Qatar and with Egypt to try to bridge the gaps that remain between the parties so that we could get agreement to what the President put out there a couple of months ago. In a very constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, he confirmed to me that Israel accepts the bridging proposal, that he supports it. It's now incumbent on Hamas to do the same.
Antony Blinken. Well, for the very latest, let's cross live now to Tel Aviv and speak with Arise special correspondent Carl Bostic. Good to see you, Carl. Just tell us more about, first of all, the 6 dead hostages whose bodies have been recovered.
Charles, it's just incredible just to disturbing to read about, because it was reported today in the Israeli media that those 6 hostages, they were actually all still alive as of March. So in other words, many are saying that if a deal had been done by March, because 3 out of those 6 were over the age of 75, they would have been amongst the first people to have been released if there had been a deal. So there's that problem there. And they only felt that 5 were presumed dead in May or June, and only a 6th who we found to be dead. They weren't aware of being killed. They thought that maybe he was still alive. What's also interesting is this, Charles, this operation by the IDF, they were back in this neighborhood taking control of it, and they exchanged gunfire with Hamas gunmen. And in the course of killing them, they found that they were guarding or protecting a tunnel shaft. And they went to the tunnel shaft 10 meters deep, Charles. They found the tunnel shaft leading to a tunnel. And when they got to the tunnel, Charles, they found evidence of hostages being kept there in this tunnel. And in going to the tunnel, they found explosives and weapons, which they detonated. And through Israeli intelligence, they found the bodies hidden behind a false panel, hidden behind a false wall. This was all Monday into Tuesday night. So that's what happened there, Charles. But people are very angry because they're saying with each passing day, there will be more discoveries like this and more hostages being found dead and not alive.
Indeed, and this obviously gives extra impetus, Carl, to the effort to try to free the remaining hostages. But at the same time, we're also hearing about more Palestinian deaths, including at a school in Gaza.
That's right, Charles. And in fact, what's being said is that until there's a deal you're going to get this daily violence. It's also just cyclical. And what that means is that, Hamas is basically saying they'll continue fighting. You showed the comments by Blinken and Biden, but even Israel is saying they were surprised by the comments that a deal was imminent because a big sticking point is a continuous Israeli presence on the border of Gaza and Egypt. And so, as far as this strike that you're talking about, Charles, this is happening every other day, and Israel is maintaining that these strikes are driven by the fact that there are Hamas operatives in these locations. They're finding tunnel shafts, they're finding weapons stockpiles, and that's why they want to have an Israeli presence to screen any men coming north in case they have weapons.
And this comes as those pushing for a ceasefire and hostage release deal. Notably, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, we're listening to him earlier, has been urging all sides to refrain from actions that would escalate tensions. But I mean, neither side is listening to him, are they?
That's right, Charles. In fact, Israel and Hamas are actually surprised by Blinken's and President Biden's comments that these gaps have been bridged because, in fact, Hamas is saying that U.S. is showing a blind bias towards Israel in letting Israel still keep a troop presence on the border with Gaza. Keep in mind, Charles, Gaza is only a quarter the size of Abuja with 2 million people. And that Philadelphia corridor is about 7 miles long. And Israel basically wants to keep troops there because they maintain that that's been the gateway, that's been the tunnels that allowed for weapons and fighters to be smuggled in and out of Gaza from Egypt. They want control of that. And the U.S. is saying that they've come up with a solution that's acceptable to all sides. And it's not true. Meanwhile, in the meeting with Egypt's President al-Sisi, he's saying that the likelihood of a regional war is difficult to imagine, but it's possible. And at the same time, you also have Iran's Revolutionary Guard spokesman saying because they still plan to retaliate against Israel for the killings of the Hamas leader on Iranian soil, Ismail Haniyeh. That was 3 weeks ago. And they're saying that they will take their time to respond to retaliate. So you have the problem of hostages still alive who need to be returned because they're dying by the day. You have the prospect of a regional war. And now you have a health crisis. There, a looming polio outbreak.
So basically notes of expectation and cautious optimism from the Americans, the hope that there could be, from what we've heard, a breakthrough possibly within the next week or so, but the mood on the ground does not match that expectation in your assessment.
Absolutely not, Charles, unfortunately. In fact, people are waiting for an attack from Iran or Hezbollah when like April, which could be days. At the same time, Israeli officials are saying privately that, yes, these talks will be out in Cairo on Thursday and Friday with more agreement on principles, but there will probably be another round of talks beyond this week. But right now, there's a sense that these talks have reached a dead end, Charles. So if anything, people are very pessimistic. They're expecting some kind of retaliation. And this uncertainty is part of this strategy because there's a psychological impact that people can't plan. You go to businesses and restaurants and such, or beaches, and they're half empty or nearly empty. Business is down, Charles, and airlines have canceled their flights now until the end of August.
Carl, thanks very much indeed. Carl Bostic is our special correspondent. He was talking to me on the line there from Tel Aviv and basically saying to us that if a ceasefire deal is not reached, a ceasefire deal that has been months in the making, if it fails to be reached, that would almost definitely escalate the chances of a much bigger regional war. Carl Bostic in Tel Aviv.